Aloha e kako! Welcome back to the Net Papakahana Online Professional Development for our 6th grade curriculum. Let's go from Mauka to Makai. In this video, we'll be covering Unit 1, Numbers. Here are some of the Common Core standards that will be covered in this unit. There are a lot of standards here and even more on the next slide, so please feel free to pause this video if you would like to read them more thoroughly. If you have a copy of our curriculum, you'll be able to find all of these standards at the very beginning of the unit. As you can see, the standards in this unit come from the Common Core domain of the number system, as denoted by the letters NS. These standards mainly focus on plotting, ordering, and comparing rational numbers, which will be presented in both decimal and fractional forms. The standards in this unit also focus on determining the distances between integers and in particular the distance from 0, the absolute value. And last but not least, the standards involve finding and using common multiples and common factors. The Unit 1 activity that we'll be reviewing in this video is the Module 1 Integers activity. In this activity, we have a story about the different kinds of life that we'll see as we travel around in an ahupua'a, from the uplands, Mauka, all the way down to the sea, Makai. The word that describes how many different kinds of life are present is biodiversity. For example, a farm that has 1,000 chickens has less biodiversity or is less biodiverse than a farm with 1 chicken, 1 duck, 1 cow, and 1 pig. Although the larger chicken farm has 1,000 animals, they are all the same kind of animal, so it is considered to be less biodiverse than a smaller farm with 4 different animals. If you want, you can pause the video to read the whole story, but the gist of it is that in this story, we will travel through an ahupua'a, find some plants and animals, and then make a record of the altitude at which we found them. For example, this Ve'ekio beetle was found 3,725 meters above sea level, or at an altitude of 3,725 meters. And this opakapaka was caught 642 meters below sea level, or at an altitude of negative 642 meters, and so on. In the first part of the activity, we will have to list down the plants and animals that we see and the altitude that we see them at. I'm going to switch back to the story, and if you want, you can pause the video and fill out the table. Or you can just write on the printed version of the student activities. Okay, here's what the first part looks like when it's completed. For the next part of this activity, we will be putting these plants and animals in order. In part 2, we'll be ordering them from lowest altitude to highest, kind of like an informal number line. So on the left, there will be the things that are found at the lowest altitudes, and on the right will be the things that are found at the highest altitudes. In part 3, we'll be ordering them based on their distance from sea level, which is an altitude of 0 meters. So on the left will be the things that are found closest to sea level, and on the right will be the things that are found furthest from sea level. I'm going to show the previous table again, and if you want, you can pause the video to complete one or both of these parts. Okie dokie, welcome back. For part 2, we'll write down the plant or animal that has the most negative altitude, which is the gulper eel. And then we'll move up to 0, which is the man-o-war. And then we'll continue to the positive altitudes, all the way up to the Ve'ekio beetle. And here's the result. Part 3 involves taking the absolute values of the altitudes before ordering them. So we have to start close to 0, which is the man-o-war, and then we move away from 0. The krill and the opi'i are next, and both have the same distance from 0. Then we go to the opakapaka and then the ohia, and move on until the Ve'ekio beetle again. And here's the result. We're going to skip parts 4 and 5 in this video. Part 4 asks you to write a few inequalities using the various altitudes, and then look for plants and animals whose altitudes satisfy these inequalities. Part 5 asks you if you've personally seen the plants and animals in this activity, and if so, where? Finally, we finished the activity with another open-ended question. What is the most interesting plant or animal that you've seen in Hawaii? What was so interesting about it? We really like this question because it reminds us that authentic learning can take place anywhere, not just in the classroom. We also like this question because there is usually a personal story attached to the answer, and these stories can help students to relate to the activity and, even more importantly, to relate to each other. You are always encouraged to modify the Ne'epapakahana activities to better fit the needs of your classroom or your teaching style. If any of the parts are too complicated, please feel free to skip it, or better yet, add some scaffolding. For example, your students might want to spend some time to explicitly order the altitudes in Part 1 before proceeding to Part 2. If you would like to add some complexity, we recommend spending more time on the inequality problems and coming up with some other inequalities of your own. You can also ask your students what was the tallest mountain they've ever been on. There aren't a lot of mountains tall enough for the Vecchio to live on. You can even incorporate first-century learning skills and have the students look up records for free diving, which is a sport where people try to go as deep as possible underwater on a single breath of air. And then you can talk about the types of plants and animals that a freediver can encounter at those depths. If you would like to turn this activity into a project, you can also make a tall poster of a hypothetical ahupua'a and sea. And then the students can use the internet to learn more about different types of native plants and animals. The students can then draw and cut out pictures of these plants and animals and stick them onto the ahupua'a poster at their appropriate altitudes. Well, that's it for Unit 1. See you again in the next video for Unit 2. Ahui ho!